Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Foxify Radio. Today we're joined by the lovely Matthew Walker, who is quite well known in the space. He is, I think you're a co-founder of Obsidian.
Yes.
Am I right in saying that? Yes, perfect.
Yep.
Didn't want to get it wrong. So he's a co-founder of Obsidian, which are, again, quite well known in the space. So thanks for joining us, Matthew. It's really great to have you.
Hey, it's awesome to be here. I was just telling you, I'm usually the one interviewing people. So it's fun I think this is the second or third time I've ever been somewhere where I wasn't in charge of preparing the conversation. So it's nice to just hang out.
Yeah, it's fun. We've done a bit of a switch, haven't we? Because, other than this podcast, I'm normally on the other side.
Yep. I've interviewed you 3 times with MDB, but not this way.
Thought we'd turn the tables, put you on the spot a bit.
Excited.
So those of you that haven't heard of Obsidian is quite a wide-ranging organization, shall we say. So obviously based in crypto and Web3. You have a really big community, and then you also offer some Web3 services as well. That's right?
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Now I was going to say, tell us a bit more about Obsidian and what you guys offer.
Yeah. So we started as a community. It was my brother-in-law, Jesse Eckel, and I decided 18 months ago now, we were looking at the crypto space and just talking about what we could build here. We both recognized that this is like the space where the future is coming. And the focus, Jesse already had his YouTube channel. Nobody knew who I was. I was an entrepreneur from outside of Web3. And we just had a conversation about the fact that, it feels like all of the coolest people we know are wanting to be in this space. So what can we do to get all of those people in the same room? And that's where Obsidian started, was really just, let's get all of the best people we know in one room, get their brains in the same space, get their ideas in the same space. Neither of us at that time were a part of any like crypto Discord communities. I think I didn't even realize that was a whole sector on its own. No idea. We thought we were geniuses for coming up with something like let's funnel your followers from YouTube over to, I don't know, a Discord channel, and we can all use it as like a think tank. We didn't realize that was already a thing that was being done, but we went in just full blaze. And now, that was the first piece. And we've got a community on Discord, a little over 20,000 people. And then we started asking questions about what problems can we solve? Like we're entrepreneurs at heart. We love business. We love solving things. We love creating things. What can we solve? We got rugged a couple of times early on. And so pretty quickly it was like, well, we're tired of getting rugged. How can we stop that? Like that's a legitimate problem. So KYC, this is not a dig at any KYC company, but I think the concept of a KYC company, which is just someone who verifies anonymous people in crypto. The industry was pretty early. And so there was a lot of things that could have been done better, but nobody really knew that because the only people doing anything were the first ones to do it. So we came in with some ideas and we started our own KYC company with the intent of, look, if these guys rug, then we know who they are. So we can't get rugged anymore. And we were a little bit wrong on that because we still got rugged. But what we learned getting rugged was that we could improve the process. And we went on to unrug projects. I think Obsidian, somewhere around $2 million at this point, have we unrugged. And so we came in as a KYC company. And then we've developed a lot since then. We've done a lot of like forward-facing stuff. That's where I think we met you guys KYC first. So we KYC'd MDB. And then had you in AMAs. I don't know which one happened first, one or the other.
I think it was the KYC first. I think we were one of your I feel like MDB and Obsidian's journeys are like almost intertwined. I feel like we were both, starting out and growing.
Yeah, you were one of our first 3 clients. Yeah. I forget if you were 1, 2, or 3, but you were one of the first 3 clients.
Yeah, I remember, definitely.
And then we started doing all the AMAs, which was really, it was like, we just want to talk to these projects. We want whitelist opportunities. We want to invest in these startups, but I'm tired of like seeing anonymous people make claims and I never get a say in the conversation. And so we just started inviting all of these early projects to come talk with us, and ask our own questions to them. And that was a lot of fun. And that evolved into the podcast today, which is a bunch of different shows. We had the Whitelist Guild back then, which was just our way of saying, hey, we've seen, there was one specific project, Rome. Do you remember Rome? Were you around with that project?
I don't remember Realm, actually. No.
So they were like right outside of, it was like DAOs and Ohm forks and like games were all the hype. And this project launched that looked so cool. And I threw $1,000 into it. And that was like pretty early on in my DeFi journey. And so that was like definitely more than I reasonably should have thrown in. But I threw $1,000 in on day one. The project had been live for, I don't know, 5 minutes. And I threw $1,000 in. And in less than an hour, my 1,000 was worth like $100. And it was because they whitelisted a bunch of individuals at $20 per token. And then the launch price was $1,000. I don't know how they didn't think that that was a bad idea because there was no lock-in. So everyone dumped immediately.
That's insane.
And we got screwed. Anyone who invested day one, we were the losers. And we thought, dude, there's got to be a way to fix that problem. Like there's got to be a way to find good quality investors for projects so they don't have people that are going to dump on them. Yeah. And so that was the other initial point that we met with you guys, because I think we had like 50 people that we brought that got whitelisted for MDB. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge win for all of them. And I think we had like very few that sold. A lot of those people still hold and are members of your community today.
Yeah, I remember. Obviously, you know, as happens in DeFi, particularly when, you know, there was the bear market and the Terra crash, and I feel like there's a real spotlight, like negative spotlight across the board on everybody. Yeah. And I remember you guys getting a bit of stick about this whitelist council, and, you know,
because nobody knew who we were.
Well, exactly. Obsidian are just promoting pump and dumps. That's what they're for. And actually, I think Danny went public and he said, look, I've looked into this actually. Like, I've painstakingly gone through our whitelist wallets, and Obsidian haven't sold. I don't think any of them, or like maybe one of the 50 had sold.
Yeah, I forget the number he showed, but it was something like the holders that Obsidian brought were like 4 times more likely to hold than a regular whitelister.
Yeah,
or something.
And I remember, and I remember you guys getting a bit of a bad name. Not just you. Like I think, like I say, the industry was a bit of a mess at the time.
And it was
disastrous. Anything negative they could find. And people were like, oh no, you know, Obsidian are just a pump and dump. And actually, it was so far from the truth when we dug into our own numbers. You know, having worked with you guys personally, and we could evidence it one way or another. And actually, it was massively in your favor. Your guys were holders; they were good investors.
Which I was really excited about because I didn't know those numbers going into that live conversation. I remember I was at the park with my kids, playing some games, and I had my phone open and I was listening to Danny, and I think it was Simsala that was on the stage with him looking at the numbers from Sphere. And I was like, man, I really hope that these guys actually held.
Oh my God, is this going to go in our favor or not?
Yeah, I was nervous. And then seeing that he was like, they were 4 times more. I think it was 4. Don't quote me on that. Somewhere in that range, more likely. And I was like, whoo, we picked the right people for those whitelists. That was awesome.
No, definitely. I do remember that really clearly.
That was early on. We don't do a ton of whitelists anymore just because it's not like there's a bunch of projects launching right now, 12 months into a winter. We still do a little bit. And then we transitioned to, we have Talent by Obsidian that we use. We haven't officially, so I shouldn't say this officially, but we haven't like officially stopped KYC or anything like that. We've definitely slowed it down. Just because it feels like every project is shutting down. And then that takes a ton of work on our end to make sure like, hey, we KYC this project. Now we have to shut you down. And in order to make sure that you're not stealing anything, we have to put hundreds of hours into verifying every transaction you've ever made before you can shut down. And so in this market, KYC is honestly not profitable if you want to be ethical, at least in the way that we set it up. Like maybe someone else has other ways that they do it. So our focus had been on Talent by Obsidian, which was just, hey, if you're a startup looking for anybody that you need, like we can KYC them as well. So we've got like a pool of, I don't know, developers, artists, managers, anyone that would work in crypto. And we verify their identities the same way that we would verify a project, so that if a project hires one of them and they're anonymous, they know that we hold them on file. And that's a lot easier verifying single people as opposed to entire projects managing multi-million-dollar treasuries. So we've been there. The podcast is a huge focus, just because I think so much of what we do comes down to conversations. Even our relationship with you guys, that was built. Yes, we KYC'd you. Yes, we had some whitelist submissions on your early investments, but a lot of it really was just continual conversations every couple of months, sitting down and talking about what MDB is doing in crypto to make it better, right? Which evolved into your name, Make DeFi Better. I remember the early days before that was the name. And that's kind of our goal now is I just want to find the projects and the investments and the ideas that are genuinely doing something cool. I know everyone always teases me for saying awesome too many times in our AMAs, but I want to find the awesome projects. Like I want to be blown away when I speak to somebody, because I came into crypto not as the guy with the master's degree, right? I was a college dropout. And so when I came into this space, totally a noob 2 years ago. And I want to be blown away by the tech. I want to be blown away by what people are doing. And I think that's the coolest part for me about being in crypto, is seeing just all of these awesome ideas coming to fruition. And it's like a game, wondering, can they succeed at this idea?
Yeah. It's absolutely insane. And like, it's a really good point you make about, firstly, KYC can't be profitable if you're shutting all these projects down, which is a lot, right? It is a lot right now. And then there is a need for, genuine people that work in the space. So I can't tell you how many times in the early days, when I was first working in sort of crypto and DeFi, I would be like scammed by marketers, people claiming they were marketing.
And marketing is the biggest fraud in crypto.
Yeah, they would take the money and that's it. Never heard from them again. And it's a real learning curve at the time. And actually, had we at the time been able to say, come to you guys and said, we need someone that can provide this marketing service or can do this, we would have used that service because we got scammed. Like I say, I can name, probably at least 2 or 3 people by name who scammed us, if that's their real name.
Yeah, I remember. I forget who the person was, but I remember that one of those situations happened to you guys that Danny was telling me about. And that was right before. I don't even want to bring up that. There was drama that like someone was making YouTube videos about us. I'm sure you remember that, like fake YouTube videos about Obsidian.
Yes.
But in the same time period, you guys had someone on your own team or something that was hired that tried to pull a coup against you and Danny or something crazy. And that's like the nature of crypto, right? Is you get so many people in this space. You get the people that are genuinely excited, that are genuinely knowledgeable, but you get a lot of bad actors because it's a space that promotes anonymity.
Oh, absolutely. And I think as well, so I have this theory. I say theory loosely. It's, it's not as dramatic as that. But I remember when I first started university, right?
Yeah.
And everybody was new. Everyone was in the same boat. Nobody knew anybody else. And so you could go to university and you could be whoever you wanted to be. You could be, someone mega popular, if that's what you wanted to be. You could be sporty. You could be, this social butterfly, whatever you wanted to be. Whoever you were at school and whatever friendship groups you had at school but they weren't relevant, right? So you could go and reinvent yourself. And for me, this space has the same effect on people.
Oh, yeah. Because
nobody
knows you.
Nobody knows who you are. So you can come along and you can be even easier than, say, at university, because it's online. You can, catfish and make up fake profiles and have aliases. And I just don't think 95% of the people in this space are who they say they are. I don't,
I would agree with that, because I think to play devil's advocate, on one hand, I do think that it's a lot easier to be maybe like the person you want to be in this space than who you totally are. Because I would say, coming into the space, if I can tell like a funny story here, I remember the first AMA that I ever did. This would have been almost 2 years ago at this point. I had been in crypto a little bit. And when I say crypto, I mean, like, I was on Coinbase buying like Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP, back when I was still on Coinbase. But I was not a DeFi native. And I came into DeFi, Obsidian, the community, there was no company. The community had existed for maybe a month at this point. And that was when we were like, ooh, like this project looks interesting. Let's just ask them if they want to talk to us. And it was Jesse and I interviewing them. And I remember sitting there thinking like, they're using all of these crypto words. I have no idea what anything means. No idea what they're talking about. And I was basically just faking it till I can make it. I was almost full BS. I think I was authentic that I really wanted to know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
I don't think I belonged on that stage. I was not the one interviewing them at that point. Because I really was in so far over my head. I don't even remember the terms they were using. I just remember like the crypto terms that I had never heard before this conversation. And I had to, I remember asking specifically, I was like, so like, if like going back to whatever you just said, if pretend someone had never been in crypto before and they had no idea what that was, how would you break that idea down? Because I was that person who had no idea what the heck they were talking about. And so to play devil's advocate, like, I think that there are some people, like I was really authentic about wanting to be in crypto, wanting to understand the space, seeing the value in it, but I really was a novice. And so there was times that I felt like to even be allowed in the room, I had to front some confidence. I don't feel like that I'm at that point anymore, because I think once you have hundreds of conversations, you start to learn. But I did feel like
just know things now just through. I feel like this is one thing Danny and I really realized when launching Foxify. I mean, obviously hiring staff, and there's stuff that we just know. Like, we don't know how we know it. We just know it because we've been in the space. Like you say, we've had conversations. So I feel like, having spoken to so many projects and having people talk to you about so many different white papers and concepts, you must know so much now.
Yeah, I think it took a bit. I have definitely learned via experience. And that's my point, is like I came into it knowing, like, I guess I knew business because I owned my own businesses before coming into crypto. So I understood like business and economic concepts, but I definitely did not understand crypto. And I had to front confidence just to be allowed in the room, and then play like if you were a novice, if this was my grandma, like talk to me like that. So I think there's probably some people in crypto that's their front, is they really want to know, but they're too embarrassed to say. I was definitely too embarrassed to say like, dude, you're way over my head. I don't know what you're talking about. Can you dumb it down? And I think there are people that are embarrassed to say that, so they come across as fake. But on the other hand, man, there are so many people that I've talked to, even some that I've interviewed, that when they're talking, it just feels like I'm talking to a robot, or like you're just saying the things that you're supposed to say. Do you really know what you're talking about? And I think part of that is that, like I said, you mentioned going to university. I was a dropout. I dropped out 3 months into college, never went back, went straight into business and everything else that I was doing. I think there's a lot of people, from probably more than any other business sector, there is a lot of novices that, whether they're a dropout like me, or there are so many people that I speak to that pretend like they have experience, but the reality is they're fresh out of high school. One of the first rugs that we uncovered was from a 15-year-old boy. 15-year-old boy. And he was known as a competent expert developer in the little sector that he was in. And no one knew that he was a teenager. And that's my point, is like, there's a lot of people that I think are just, crypto welcomes you if you have no experience, because all you have to say is, I have experience, and everyone just believes you for some reason because you're anonymous.
It's crazy. I remember there was and I don't know if this person is still circling around. I think probably not, because every project they were ever in
is dead
or died, and they were quite a well-known marketer at the time. Undocs, completely anon. And you could just see they would circle through these projects, and no project they were ever in ever did any good. And it was either like this ongoing scam where they were, trying to steal money, or they just didn't know what they were doing, but somehow they kept getting hired as a marketer for this next project, despite the fact their previous project failed and the one before that failed. And it's like people were still taking their word that
so they could say like, hey, I've marketed for 10 projects, but the 10 projects died. And I saw that a lot. I think I saw that with marketing, probably more than any other industry inside of DeFi. There are, if I could like harp on one point, it is that exactly that marketing in DeFi is generally a scam, and you should be really picky about who you give money to promote you, to advertise you. I mean, I saw people recommending spending $50,000 on a single YouTube video that wasn't even getting 50,000 views. And so like you're spending what, $3 per view?
Honestly.
For what? Because your marketer got a $2,500 commission and they were excited about that. Like that's all it came down to. I mean, we had at our peak, we were doing paid AMAs. I don't think we ever charged you guys for an AMA just because we had a good relationship.
Oh, so that's good. Thanks for
But
saving.
at our peak, we were charging $1,000 for an AMA. But we did that because we had multiple instances where people came in for AMAs and in the following hour, their token price doubled or tripled. Like that was legitimately happening in that market. So it didn't feel like we were like scamming anybody out of that. Like, hey, if we have an honest conversation and you can prove that your project is quality, you'll probably walk away with a bunch of investors. And so that felt fair. But in this market, like I stopped doing paid AMAs because it felt like I was selling you something like a used car salesman, because if I was charging for an AMA, dude, I don't know. In this market, you're not getting quick investors. It's not going to happen.
You're not getting the same ROI.
So I don't feel right ethically selling you $1,000 AMA if you're going to get $100 or $200 worth of investors and that's it. Like that's a complete ripoff. And so we moved away from the paid model entirely. But there's still a lot of people that are charging thousands of dollars for AMAs that are producing no return, and they don't feel bad about it.
Oh, it's insane. Like one of my biggest bugbears in this industry. Like, I've worked in marketing for years. Obviously, you know, crypto Web3 is a lot more recent, and people, I think people are wisening up, but certainly at the beginning, our investors, or not ours specifically, investors in general, degens in general, put value on paid marketing. So you have to be on Dex Tools and PooCoin. You have to be paying for these AMAs with these big YouTubers, and you have to be paying for like explainer videos with these big YouTubers. And I feel like I talked myself blue in the face so many times when I was trying to explain to people that is like a terrible ROI. Like that looks good, you know.
Well, because it's all hype.
Yeah, it's like hype, optics. It looks great, but what you actually get back from that is pretty much nothing. And I used to find it so frustrating when I'd get comments like "when marketing," and I was like, "What you're asking for isn't
marketing." Yeah, we have really different. Yep. It's like, back up a second. Let's define marketing, because you have a bad definition of marketing. Not you. I mean, the DJs. Yeah. I think that's a reality, is that this is the only industry in the world where spending tens of thousands of dollars on videos counts as marketing. Like that's not actually advertising. That's bad advertising. I think there's some cases, and I will back up. There are a couple of AMA houses. There's a couple of Discord groups and Telegrams that I know that you can spend money and you get a legitimate ROI. And that's what I've always said is, don't buy at Obsidian. Most of our focus is on helping startup companies. Do not buy any of our services if you're not making more than you're spending. Like if you're giving us $1,000, do not do that if you're not going to easily make back that 1,000 and more. And I think that's the big issue, is you think like, well, I'm going to spend a bunch of money for a slew of YouTube videos and maybe it'll get me more investors. But in this market, probably not. Like, unless they've got a refined community that is specifically that way. Like I can think of one Telegram channel off the top of my head right now that I know if you went and spend money on their AMA, their community is so quick to buy still in this market that like that's probably valuable. Sure, it's an expensive AMA, but it's fine because you spend a couple grand and you're going to make 20 grand back and investors immediately. That's a positive ROI. The average one is not producing that in any capacity. No, it's just you're paying for eyes that aren't buying. And that's the hard part, is like, if you're spending money, you should get an immediate return from that money. And I think for whatever reason, crypto project, like that's such a simple idea and they miss it.
I know. I remember, and you might even know which one I'm talking about. I'm sure they might have been one of your early KYCs, and they went under very, very, very quickly. I think they got rugged by like a rogue dev literally on day one, and it came to light. And this is why I think you guys were handling it, because all of their transactions came out, and it came to light that they'd spent like $80,000 on marketing. $80,000 on marketing, and all they had to show for it was like, I don't know, 3 YouTube videos and a couple of PR articles in like Yahoo Finance or something. Like, and it was just like, what on earth? Like, who is managing your marketing budget, firstly? Like,
some weird person they hired on the side. There, I
literally.
can't tell you. I wonder if I was thinking of the same person as you, because there's a handful that I remember saying like, "Huh, you're bringing me another project for an AMA." Oh, like
I think obviously we would never name names on here, but I think you would know.
there was like 4 or 5 people that probably brought me, and I'm talking like in the bull market, so not in this market, that brought me probably like weekly. They were bringing me 2 new projects for AMAs, 2 or 3 projects each. And I was blown away that they were doing this. But then, and that was cool for us because at the time we were producing returns if you were showing up for an AMA. But the average, like what, and we were also, to my knowledge, we were the cheapest AMA house. So like that our competitors were charging $3 to $5 grand for a single AMA. We never went above 1,000. And I would say 50% of them, the project was like, we can't afford 1,000, and we just cut it down to whatever they can afford. So for us, it was a little bit less about like, give me the $1,000, and more about, hey, we're doing this I'm spending probably 30 hours a week interviewing people. Like, let's turn that into a revenue stream of some capacity. But yeah, we had a lot of people that were bringing us multiple projects a week. And that was all they did for marketing, is they just delivered or added the founders to 10 DM chat groups with AMA houses. And that was all they did. How is that marketing? That's networking at best. That is not marketing.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I feel like that's improved. I think because of the market, that's had to improve. People,
no one wants to spend money anymore, and it's forced the quality of service to go up. Yeah,
absolutely. But it was like the Wild West out there for a good while. Certainly, when we first launched our very first project, and it was insane. It was literally insane. So tell us a bit more about you, Matthew. You've obviously spoken about Obsidian. So you dropped out of college. You started a business. Is that right?
I've done a bunch of things. I'm like the elusive one. I think I told you before the show, this is the first time that I've ever shown my face in a video.
We have exclusive Matthew
right
Walker
here, baby. This is it.
By the time this goes live, you'll probably have already been on video.
Maybe on my own pod. Yeah. I mentioned our podcast is starting video this week too. But I've been the elusive one. Everyone knew who Jesse was because he was the big YouTuber. I was just the person behind the scenes. I was a profile picture. I've done a bunch of different stuff. I was the kid in high school. I wasn't like horrible grades or anything, but I was the kid in high school that just every time anyone ever asked me what I wanted to do for a living, I had either no answer or I had a different answer every week, depending on what you asked me. Just because I think I wanted to do so much that I never really saw how it was plausible to do that. And becoming an entrepreneur essentially solved that for me, because I feel like my life gets to be something new or exciting every couple of months. Things shift and change. But out of high school, I traveled the world a little bit. I spent some time in Canada. I spent some time in Africa, lived in Kenya for a hot minute. That was a lot of fun. I was, you wouldn't tell with the long hair, and now that I'm an old man, but I was modeling in San Francisco. I wanted to be an actor. Some of my friends made it. I won't name drop them because I think that's weird, but I've got some friends that are A-list actors now, and maybe I should have stuck with it.
You've got a name drop one.
Yep. I should have stuck with them.
That's insane. You'll have to DM me. I want to know.
I have a friend who is the star of one of the top shows on Netflix right now. And we were acting and stuff together before either of us were known. And then I switched from that. So my wife got pregnant, and it paid nothing to be in the, like, I'm a nobody trying to be an actor world. It paid literally nothing. There was times that there was a job that was like a month long, and it was something like $80 a day for 12-hour days. So you couldn't do anything on the side. It's making no money. My wife's pregnant. And it was at that point that I was like, okay, like, I know I want to like do creative stuff. I know that I'm all over the place, but I have to do something more legitimate. And when I say acting, I was like, while I was acting, I also worked at a school. I was running some STEM programs for middle schoolers, and speaking in front of 50 kids every day as well. So like, I think I was in a lot of different industries bouncing around as a hot potato, where all of them, the string that tied them together was just communication.
Yeah.
And so it was at that point that my wife was pregnant. I knew that I needed to make more money than I was making. I couldn't just chase my dreams and not produce anything. And so that's when I got into business and became an entrepreneur. I lived in California. So this was a pretty specific industry. I was just looking at different things that I could do that would make more money. And there's a long story here, probably 10 different attempts, 10 different types of companies, built lots of different things that didn't work. The one that did finally work was a swimming pool company, where it was California. Pools are everywhere. It was something like 1 in 3 houses in the area that I was working had a swimming pool. Wow. And so started a swimming pool company, built that up well enough to sell it for like 4 times what I invested into it. And then was able to, at that point, that would have started leading us to Obsidian. Trying to think in my brain here. That would have been like right around the time that we decided to leave California. It was just real expensive to live there. The numbers were ridiculous. Like I was making $12,000 a month, and we could not afford to buy a small house.
Wow, that's insane.
Which is crazy. Like that was, I come from, when I say I was like the kid in high school that wanted to do everything, did not graduate college. I come from not a wealthy background at all. Like at 18 years old, I was buying groceries with food stamps because I had no other option. We got our groceries from the food bank as a little kid. I wasn't the poorest kid in America. There was a lot of people less fortunate than me, but we were not wealthy. I never, until I was in my mid 20s, I was always my whole life under the America's like poverty line. And so it wasn't until I became an entrepreneur that I got above that poverty line. And so, being at a place where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making the best money that I've ever made. Like my dad had never made this much money. My grandparents never made this money. I'm making over $10,000 a month. And I feel like we're almost living month to month because it's so expensive. We can't afford a house. No bank here will give us a loan for a house because I'm an entrepreneur, because they think it's not consistent enough. And so we decided, like, we're just going to leave California at this point. It's not reasonable for us to raise a family here. My wife was pregnant with our second kid. And so we packed up and picked a random state. We looked at the states in the US. We were talking about this earlier. In America, the states vary so much, with there being 50 different states, different laws, different cultures. And we just looked for what states are the cheapest to live in, which ones have some pretty outdoors. I'm a real outdoorsy person. And which ones have like the lowest taxes. And so we ended up choosing Tennessee. And so we had never even visited, never flew out here, nothing. We sold everything. We packed everything up into my truck and we drove across the country. And that led us to just figuring out different side hustles. And I was trying different things. And eventually Obsidian evolved from that. So I definitely am if you can name it, I've probably done it in the last 15 years. I taught at middle schools. I traveled the world. I spent 5 years in the military. I skipped that over there. So if it's there, I've probably like dabbled in it. I wanted to be an actor. I was modeling. I was on some silly calendar with baby animals, all kinds of stuff. If you can name it, I've probably tried it. And that, I think really that led me to this place of like, I'm an addict at wandering. Like I just get excited about adventure. I get excited about new things. I have to be able to find something new in my day. And not that my previous companies, I worked longer than Obsidian, but they got so stagnant. They got boring. What makes life interesting for me is being able to build on the precipice of something exciting. So that, to me, crypto is that, because it feels like it's new every day. And being an entrepreneur is that. So, if I could leave one thing for all the degens that follow Foxify or MDB, if you're an 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old boy lost in the world, trying to figure out what to do, I've been there. And I think that being an entrepreneur, if you can get disciplined enough to do it well, could be the solution.
Yeah. No, do you know, I completely agree. And I'm a little bit like you in the sense I never really knew what I wanted to do. I went and I did a law degree, and
Awesome.
anyone
Didn't know that.
that knows me just knows that I'm not a lawyer. Like, I'm not, you know, it's very black and white. It's very structured. That is not me. I'm like manically, like, just scatterbrained, you know.
That's
like
me. I am chaos personified.
Yeah, that is absolutely me. And I went and did it because I thought it would make me loads of money, and I thought it was the right thing to do. And it wasn't. And actually, I only ended up being like, you know, an entrepreneur or self-employed through chance, really, because I had my first child, and the job I was at wouldn't let me go back sort of flexibly.
Okay.
And when you've got a baby that relies on you, you need some flexibility. And obviously, I don't know what childcare is like in the US. In the UK, childcare is horrendous. It's so expensive. It's so hard to get. It's
basically
so
in a 2-parent household, one parent's entire salary would go towards childcare.
Yeah, it's the same here. And you don't get that flexibility. So even if you were both working, like, you know, 8 till 6 sort of office jobs, and you know, one of you would still need to have to take sick days for the kid. One of you would have to leave a bit early because nursery shuts before your office does. Like, it's terrible. So that's how I ended up being a sort of an entrepreneur or self-employed. And do you know what? And I think you probably agree. I think once you've gone that route, you can't really ever go back.
No,
like,
I can't imagine it. I mean, we've had rough months at Obsidian, especially in the bear market, where there have been times where I'm like, shoot, I don't even know if we're going to cover our employee salaries this month. What are we going to do? Do I just go do something else? We've had those conversations. Like, do we close up shop? And there have been times that it wasn't even about believing in what Obsidian had at the moment, so much as it was like, I'm just not willing to go back. You hit on a good point. I missed that in my whole story. I mean, I think one of the most important things in the world to me is family. My whole life is my wife and kids. I have the greatest kids in the world, and I love that I have the capacity to work from home. I mean, there's my pillow right there. To work from home and be close to my kids. My daughter is napping 20 feet from me right now. I get my lunch break in the kitchen with them. You know, like I have worked. I was in the military while I had kids. I have worked 12-hour days while having kids and being gone for days at a time. And I never, ever want to do that again, unless it's in my own home. Right now, being an entrepreneur, I think, man, you hit it. One of the coolest things is that what I build for my family at this point, and I get to decide the way that I spend time with my family, and that my kids get to feel like a priority. That there will never be a day where they wonder, like, man, why does dad value work more than me? Because everything that I do at work is simply for my family. This is a tool for our little team in my house that builds a better life for us, and it all comes back to them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you know, before this, you know, Danny worked really long hours, and I don't think he realized, and I think this is, you know, similar for a lot of people actually. And if I look back to when I was working in like a more commercial sort of salesy environment before I got into marketing, you'd be out of the house at like 6 a.m. and you'd be back at like 7:30, 8 p.m. and that was normal. And you know, now doing that around the children, like Danny's obviously been away quite a lot recently.
He's doing so many conferences.
Yeah, just in the lead up to Foxify. So it's, you know, a bit of an anomaly for us as a family for him to be away like that. And the kids have noticed it. Like, it has, you know, they've really noticed it. And it must be actually really hard on those families where that's the norm, you know. Because for us, it's, you know, it's a one-off, it's a short-term thing while we you know, build up the launch to Foxify. And yeah, it must be tough for families.
And I think that's so important to pay attention to. This is crazy. I mean, ties right into that. My son, he turned 4 2 months ago. So he's, I mean, still little. I don't know how old your kids are. My kids are 1 and 4. So we are
very similar.
So we're in the same season of life.
Yes.
And my son asks me, I am not exaggerating, every single night when I put him to bed, the question he asks me is, Dad, are you working tomorrow? Because what he looks forward to, his whole world is looking forward to when I don't have work so that he can spend time with me. Yeah. And knowing that, like, as a dad, it's so important that that I make sure that my home is taken care of. And it's so important that I make sure the finances are taken care of. But my kid doesn't know any of that. All he knows, and he literally asks me every single day, are you working tomorrow? Because Saturday and Sunday is his favorite time because I'm off work, because me and his mom are his world, you know? And so I don't ever want to live a life that I don't have the no, I'm not working tomorrow answer for him, because that's what he looks forward to. And I think, I mean, my wife doesn't work full time, but she works as well. And so if I wasn't an entrepreneur, man, that would make that even more difficult. She works at a I don't know if you guys are religious. She works at a church, and so she's in the office a couple days a week. And if I wasn't able to help with the kids and we weren't flexible, I mean, that's a huge headache in itself, because like I said, yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know, daycare for 2 kids. It's not reasonable. My wife could work full time and it would cover daycare so that she could go to work. It's silly.
It's insane. It's crazy. It really is. I think until you've got kids, and I think actually this is a big gap in this industry a little bit. I think a lot of people in this industry are a lot younger than us. I think I think we're about the same age.
I feel like a boomer being not 20 years old, 19 years old.
Exactly. And it's crazy. So a lot of them, I remember, and this is wild. Looking back, it's wild to me that this conversation even happened. And there was a guy, and I think it might have even been off the back of one of your AMAs. It was either one of yours or one of our own, because there was like the same sort of crowds you'd see in both, and he was one to be in both. And he said some quite rude things in the chat about someone who was asking some questions, and then I was like, this isn't really okay. And I think I timed him out from our server or something. Yeah. And he then messaged me directly, and he's like having a go at me, like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't time me out. That person wasn't saying anything useful. And I was like, look, I'm not being funny. Like, if I'm going to spend my time either arguing with you or looking after my kids and cuddling them, I'm going to go and see my kids. So, you know, like, I'm not going to waste my time here, basically.
Yeah.
And he was just like, you can't be on a DeFi project team and have children. Like, you can't just switch off and do other stuff. Like, you should put this project first. And if you haven't got time to work on this project, you shouldn't. And I was like, hang on a minute. You're saying that I should waste my time arguing with, a fudder, I don't really like that term, but for lack of a better term, then spend time with my children. And I think it's just because there's so many people that are so much younger in the industry. They just don't really understand how difficult or how organized you've got to be to juggle everything.
Right. There's 2 types of people that I think that I don't super trust that are active in crypto. And one is what you're talking about, those real young, inexperienced, brand new to life, but they jumped into crypto at 18. There are some hustlers. I think of Jojo from Cardinal House. He's 18. He's a rock star.
Actually, they've been on here.
Yeah, love that kid. Amazing. Him and Chris both. Those are young men that are killing it in life, and I respect them. But there's a lot of young people that are coming in straight out of high school and have no experience and no wisdom, and they just think they know how the world works. That's silly, man. I thought I knew everything at 18 and I was an idiot. I thought I knew everything at 25 and I was an idiot. And I'm sure in the future, 5 years from now, I'm going to think, man, I was an idiot back then too, because you get wiser every day. But the other person is, maybe that person's not real young. Maybe I think there's like this old mindset that it's a very white collar mindset from probably 10 years ago, that your whole life has to center around the business that you're focused on. And I don't trust those people. If you cannot lead a healthy, balanced life, I'm sorry. Like, I would way rather invest in a company and a project that is being led by people that have balanced lifestyles than someone who works 20 hours a day forever. I think it's a toxic mindset to think you need to sacrifice everything for a company and a couple of dollars, because that's not what I build companies so that my family can reap the benefits. I build companies so that I can have a better lifestyle. I build companies so that the people around me in my community can have a better lifestyle. I don't build companies for the sake of building companies. The company is not the purpose. It is a tool. And so I think there are so many people that get that wrong.
Oh, completely. One of my, and this sort of sums up my working life pre self-employment. And I worked in sales and I worked in recruitment. And recruitment is very well known for being or wanting to be a bit like Wolf of Wall Street, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like hard and fast.
They all idolize it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. And I remember going to interviews and like they're like, yeah, we just pay Paul on our lunch and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is so different. So like I was working in this one and I worked there for probably 18 months and I was actually doing really well. Like I was crushing my targets. But I remember one thing and it really stuck to me, and it wasn't directed at me. It was one of my team members and our manager, was talking to them and they're like, oh, okay, well, I need to leave soon because I'm meeting my friend for dinner. And this was at about 7:00 and in the evening. And my colleague had plans for 7:30 to meet someone for dinner. And our official finish time was, I think it was 5:30 or 6.
So they were already working overtime. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was 5:30 and we were expected to stay until 6 or it was just 6. But either way, 6 was like the earliest time to leave. And he turned around to her and he said, you should never make plans for 7:30 on a weeknight.
Like hours after work.
Hours after, like, this finish time that I don't think was even, like I said, I think contractually it was 5:30, but it was like, accepted would stay until 6. So hours after that. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to work somewhere like this. Like, it's such an unhealthy environment. And like you say, like, I think that was, actually coming on for probably about 10 years ago now when I first got into the, the world of work after uni. And I do think the world's changing. I think those places still exist, but I do think it's changing for the better.
I think
I don't know for sure.
As people like us get into business, I think that mindset evolves, but it's definitely still prevalent. I mean, I remember when we started Obsidian, we had to tell people, like, we go offline for the weekend. I'm not going to respond to your work text on a Saturday because Saturday is sacred to me, because that's when my kids get my full undivided attention. That's when my wife does not have to worry if I'm going to be checking my phone for work, and she gets my attention. And so there are, every now and then there's like an exception to that, but it's got to be really important for me to give up family time for work. Yeah. And so it was like, we took a lot of heat in the bull market for saying, like, hey, yeah, I'll respond to your DMs on Monday. I'll respond to your email in 2 days. Like I'll respond in the Discord chat in 2 days. And people were genuinely offended by that. They're like, you can't do that. Like, we need an answer now. No, you don't. Like, who needs me now? People that are not my work. So I think it's crazy, but that mindset definitely still exists in crypto. I think there's more and more people and companies like us who have this mindset. And so that is evolving, but there's a lot of people that still have the mindset of, like, nothing ever comes before work. And for me, work is not, it's not the boss. It's simply a tool.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, when you're setting something up, sometimes your hours have to be a bit flexible.
Oh, for sure.
There will be days where you have to work super long, but overall, when you're building something, you're building it to give yourself a better life, right? And that includes more family time, more work-life balance, more time to go running or to the gym or travel or whatever it is, you want to do, whatever your goals are. But it's almost like people think that, these projects are run by robots, and
we're human beings. Come on, guys. I think, and I agree. There were seasons in Obsidian that I was working 60, 70 hour, 80 hour weeks. But that was an intentional decision to set us up for a specific path. I think what people forget is if you just clock into life and let life rule you, you will work those 80-hour weeks until you die. But in my mind, choose your values, choose what you value, and then let everything else feed those values. So if that is family time, like I say, or if that's, I had James Pelton on recently, if that's religious, like James Pelton is all about, or if that's, I don't know if you know Austin Clark, he's all about fitness and health. If that's making sure that you can work out every day and that's your value, like, choose whatever your values are and then make everything else feed those values. Don't do it the other way around.
Yeah, no, completely agree. So one question I wanted to ask, I think this is something that's hopefully going to be really useful for listeners. Obviously we've established that you have been rugged, you have dealt with rugs and saved rugs through Obsidian. You must have learned, or maybe not actually, maybe you'll say actually you can't tell, but you must have maybe spotted some red flags. Is there something you would encourage people to look out for? Like, what really stands out to you as something to be aware of when investing or when researching a new project? What are your tips that way?
Good question. Yeah, there's a bunch. I think I have like a checklist that I look over personally when choosing a project now because of the situations we've been in. One real easy is paying attention to the market cap size, like how big is a project, and recognizing no matter how cool the people are behind it, the smaller a project is generally, now there are exceptions to this, but generally the higher the risk is going to be just because it's brand new. They don't have any reputation yet. They don't have any validity yet. And because without it being a rug, even if it's just price swings, lower market cap means more volatility. And so I look at the price of a project. I look at what they're legitimately solving. There are a lot of projects that are solving nothing. They have no reason to exist. There is no inherent value. I would say 75% of projects that I have spoken with in the last 18 months, and that is well over 2,000 projects, 75% of them bring no value to the table. They just exist because people are excited about them. That doesn't mean that they're a rug, but at some point, people are going to catch up to the fact that they have no value. And if you invest in that, the price will fall at some point, and it will fall drastically. The next thing, especially when looking at whether a project has the rug capacity, is I pay attention to the team. I'm sure, and you guys have heard me say this, anyone that's ever been in a call or an AMA or a podcast has heard me say, the most important thing to me is a team. We're all about teams. An idea is cool, but if you're a bad team, you can't execute that idea. Like I'm looking for great teams. And in that, I'm looking at not always experience, because there are guys like JoJo and Chris from Cardinal House that are building something awesome. And he's straight out of high school. Like there isn't experience backing him up, but there is character. And so I'm looking at teams. I want to see a couple of things. Do you have any experience? If you don't, are you humble enough to admit that you don't have experience? What is your character like? Do you carry yourself with humility? There are way too many people in crypto that are just pompous, that think that they are the best person in the world. I will be the first to admit that I am generally the least smart person on the stage. I have learned a lot of stuff because I have spoken to a lot of geniuses. So much of what has been achieved at Obsidian is because we chose the right people to be on our team. Not because I'm the smartest guy in the room, but because I'm surrounded by geniuses all the time, and I love it. And so can this team be humble? Do they have character that carries them? Do they have the right skill sets? Is this someone that's saying, I don't know. I talked to someone this morning that is all about their putting healthcare data on the blockchain. This is a new one. This is not, I know you guys know who Jenny Co is. This one's not them. It's a little bit different of an industry. But if they told me they were putting healthcare data on the blockchain and they had no healthcare experience, that would be a red flag to me. I want to know that you know the industry that you're entering into. And if you don't, do you have advisors that know the industry you're entering into? There was a good example. We have seen multiple real estate projects rug in the last 6 months. And I remember asking, there was two that I asked, and I said, like, what is your experience with real estate? And they had never bought a house before. Why in the world should I give you my money to go buy homes and turn them into NFTs when you've never bought a house in the first place? You're not a real estate investor. One of the ones that was a green flag, he admitted, he said, I'm not a real estate investor. I'm a crypto nerd, but I have someone on my team that has bought over 100 houses. They're not the crypto guy, so they're not in the AMA. But if you want to verify, if you want to check it out, you can go to our website, blah, blah, blah. They're still doing okay. So like, there's a good example of, hey, you were humble enough to admit that you weren't the guy, but you found someone who was. Yeah. And so the biggest thing that I look at is the team. Can I trust the people behind the team? And trust is a tough one in crypto because everyone's anonymous, or like we said earlier, like you never really know if what someone is saying is true. And in that, I would say you really got to trust your gut. There have been times that I've jumped in calls with people and they said all of the right things. Man, there's an example I'm thinking of that if people know, I'm not going to name drop it, but there was millions of dollars here. A very quick, it blew up overnight, worth millions of dollars, and it fell apart 1 week later. This was like 6 months ago. And they got on the stage with me the first time and said all of the right things, everything right. But one of the guys just gave me like a gut feeling of like, I don't know, man, like something's a little off. I got a bad feeling about this, as Han Solo would say. And I would say, trust your gut. When you're thinking about putting your money somewhere, trust your gut. Because if you have a red flag about someone and you can't even pinpoint it, you're probably right. and
Yes.
people are going to laugh at you. There's another one. I remember Jesse saying some cautions about, and it caused a lot of stir and a lot of drama, and we got attacked for it. But in the end, he was proven right. And it took a couple of months until everyone believed him, and it was too late at that point. But I think you need to trust your own gut, and you need to give yourself the room to trust your intuition.
Yeah.
The other things that I would look at is like really basic. Are they audited? And not just are they audited, but who are they audited by? And what does that audit say? Do they have full reign over a contract? Can they just change the rules of the investment after you invest in it? A lot of them have that. There are so many that people are excited about. And I go and look at, I mean, there was one that people were talking about like crazy. And we did an episode about it on the 100X Gem Show. And it took us 5 minutes to look at it and see they can literally change everything right now. Like they could drain the treasury, no questions asked. They can change the tax to 100%, no questions asked. They can alter the way that the funds are sent to you, no questions asked. That's a huge red flag. They could be the coolest team ever, but they need to fix that contract before I'm going to throw money at it.
Yeah.
Are they KYC'd by a reputable person? Are they, and that's not even just us, are they KYC'd by someone reputable, or are they doxed? Can you verify that they're doxed? I've seen rugs where they were, their LinkedIn profiles were there, but it was a fake LinkedIn profile with an AI photo. So like take the steps to see security, their team, and your gut. And I think you're probably fine at that point. You might get rugged sometimes still, but especially on the security front, if there's somebody assuring that they're safe, you're probably good.
Yeah, I think one big one for me, obviously agree with everything you've said completely. One big thing for me, and I like to call it word salad.
Yeah.
So
words.
literally you read a white paper and it could be 20 pages long and you get to the end of it.
There's nothing in it.
Yeah, I still don't know what you do.
Dude, there is a project. Again, I think it was the last episode of the Gem Show. I thought I was going to get some heat for this because I looked at their followers on Twitter and I saw a lot of people that I know that follow them. But I read their white paper on air and I was like, I just read 10 pages and I cannot tell you what they do that is valuable. I have no idea. They have all the right buzzwords in there. But if you can't sum up what your project does in a couple of sentences, either you're a liar and you're not producing anything, or you're really bad at communicating and you need to get someone on your team that can communicate.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
That's another important one. Can you communicate? There are a lot of projects that are geniuses, genuine people and geniuses on the team. But if they can't communicate well enough for the average investor to understand, they'll never have value, because it's not about what you produce. It's about who you sell it to. And so that's why we see Pepe blowing up this last week, right? Going to the freaking moon. And there are people that put in a couple $100 that are worth millions now. That project has no value whatsoever, but they know how to sell it. So there is some authority in the fact that hype matters a lot and interest matters a lot and people matter a lot. Their community matters a lot. So if they can't communicate well to their community, that's a red flag to me. That's not necessarily a rug, but probably a waste of your money.
Yeah. No, completely agree. Right, we're getting close to an hour.
I know.
I love it when the episodes go so smoothly. 2 more questions I want to cover.
Yes.
And we will call it a day. So just the first one is quite generic and just want to know when you think the market's going to improve, Matthew. What do you think? Next year with the halving? Do you think it'll be a bit longer than that?
It's a good question.
Like it's warmer, right?
Yeah, I mean, we do the news show every week, and the big thing that's like apparent to me every single week is that the American economy is in the worst state ever. As someone who's an American, it's kind of terrifying. It feels like we're just waiting for our dollar to implode. And I think that there is a large impact that the United States has on crypto. And that's the one thing that has me nervous, because I would say, I think that there's a decent chance that the market starts improving before the halving. Like I would project like October, November of this year, 2023. But the caveat there is it's election cycle is ramping up in the United States. The dollar is in practically the worst state that it's literally ever been in the United States history. Does some cataclysmic event happen in the US? Do we have more banking failures? Because I think that has the power to up until now, right? Historically, the market has always improved at the halving. But the American economy has always injected tons of money into crypto at the same time. I would say I'm in the boat of like, I hope and I think that the end of 2023, we start seeing the market trend upwards.
Yeah.
But it really does. I think one of two things happens if the American dollar gets to a doomsday event scenario like we're heading for. Either there's a huge hit on crypto in the short term, or it does the opposite and Bitcoin hits $1,000 or $100,000 because everyone's like, dude, we can't trust the US dollar anymore. It's just like Argentina. We need somewhere to put it. They're going to put it in crypto.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would hope. That's such a hard question. I ask everyone the same question. I would hope that it's this fall. But I don't know. There's a lot of geopolitical events happening that are it's tossing it up in the air.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And so
I'll say the second point on that is I am at the point where I'm investing again. So I do think like right now, I do think that there was a season where we encouraged people in that winter, like, hey, it's probably not time to be investing yet. Like, this is a hold on and preserve your capital moment, not a spend it. I am personally in a spending mode right now, in preparation. Maybe that's too early. Maybe that's a mistake, but hopefully, so just so people know, like my mindset is shifting of like, I think we're close enough that I'm starting to invest again.
Yeah, no, interesting. I think, we are seeing, like I say, I feel like it's warming up. I feel like we're seeing a more positive sentiment for sure. So final question. I think this one's harder. Sorry, Matthew.
Good.
I like this one. Everyone's always like, oh, I don't know what to say. Top 3 people in your life that have influenced you or you look up to, or, you get the gist.
Yeah. Top 3 people. It's a good question. I would say I'm not a huge, like, I don't tend to idolize like celebrities or people that I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that read a book and it changes their life. I like that, but I don't care too much about the people that I don't know. I think they're all human. It's real easy to idolize people because you see them somewhere big. So for me, it's more personal. There's a guy named Scott that he married my wife and I when I was a 13-year-old kid in a disaster and getting in a lot of trouble. He was an 8th grade teacher that just cared about me. And I was texting him yesterday. He is, to this day, like, I think it's really important to find people in your life that can speak truth to you, that you're willing to listen to. And he's been that guy for me for a long time. Nobody knows who he is. He's not famous anymore. He's probably got 100 followers on Instagram. But he's someone that I trust his opinion. And I've told him as an adult, I think this is actually really important. I've told him as an adult that you have the authority to say no to me. Like, if you see me doing something in my life that you think is a genuinely very bad decision, you can tell me, Matt, you need to stop. And I'm going to listen to you, even if that's against my better judgment in that moment, even if I think I know better. Because as an adult, there's nobody that can actually tell me what to do. But I trust this person enough to say, you get the authority to speak into my life. So I would say him for sure. It's huge. I would say my dad. We had a tumultuous relationship growing up, some good, some bad. But as an adult, he's taught me so much about what it means to be kind, so much about what it means to be humble. He's usually the humblest person in the room. And that's something that I think anyone who has talked to me for 5 minutes knows I can struggle with. And I have to constantly knock myself down a peg. And he is very humble and very wise. Secretly, he's in the Obsidian community. I don't think anyone knows who he is. But he actually introduced me to crypto. He's been a crypto nerd longer than me. He's awesome. And third person, that's a good question. Probably my wife. She's like my anchor. I think it's really important that you have someone in your life that knows you as well or better than you know yourself, and can be there in the good and the bad. And that's 100% her for me. She's amazing, keeps me grounded. I'm the dreamer of all dreamers, and it is very easy for me to be lost in the clouds forever. And she is my my anchor, keeps me fixed so that I don't just wisp away and go chase things that don't matter.
Yeah.
I think as someone who is just a wholehearted dreamer, yeah, man, she keeps me secure. She's not wild like I am. She's not chaos like I am. She is like the fireplace to sit down next to at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, that's great. 3 great people. And I love that analogy, the fireplace to sit down to. Like your home, right? Your cozy, nice, warm place. That's so lovely. By the way, sorry if you can hear screaming. My window's open and there's a bunch of kids just decided to turn up outside.
Oh, you're good.
But no, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having you. It's been a really interesting chat, actually. We deviated a little bit from topics a bit, but
yeah, it was fun. It's the first conversation I've been able to have in a while that wasn't purely crypto.
Yes. Yeah, I like what I try and do with this is I do try and make it, you know, keep some crypto in it, of course, but, you know, talk a little about business, about people. I think people relate to people, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening, everyone. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Alice.